Hi, this is no ordinary voice of spiritual ventriloquism. You are listening to Dummy Himself. Had a very interesting conversation last week with a brother on the issue of circumcision. And we also talked briefly about the Passover. And I mentioned to him during the course of that conversation why I did not believe that at least the greater part of Israel did not keep the Passover while they were in the wilderness. One of the reasons I believe that is because in Leviticus 23, the whole chapter concerning the feast days and the observances is the whole thing is prefaced, and when you come into the land. Okay, well, that's fair enough, but, the Bible does say we shall be as little sanctuaries in the lands where Yah has driven us. So here we are. But one of the requirements, at least of the Passover, it says that no uncircumcised male shall eat thereof, and let all their males be circumcised, and then they shall come and eat of the Passover. Okay. We also know that circumcision began with Abraham. It was the covenant that Yah made with Abraham. Okay. The covenant of circumcision. Okay. And Isaac, Yaakov, they carried that tradition forward. And Jacob, with his 12 sons, he circumcised them. It's obvious that, that continued on even in their captivity in Egypt. And we can demonstrate that very clearly from this Bible here that was the case. But there's this huge gap in circumcision, or in the practice of circumcision, during the 40 years in the wilderness. Okay. And there's really not a good explanation. I mean, I had one of the elders told me, I believe it was Elder Becker, told me, we've had a history of disobeying our people, and that is just the truth, or our people disobeying Yah. And that's true. That's very true, to our shame and not to our glory, that's for sure. But it doesn't address the issue, in my opinion, as to why. Why did they all of a sudden, when they came out of Mitzrayim, and I'm going to show you in this text here that all the men of war who came out of Mitzrayim were in fact circumcised, but then all of the children that were born in the wilderness were not circumcised. And we're going to go to that real quick here. And we know also that, I'll get to that in just a moment. But it says in chapter 5, when they had dried up the river Jordan, verse 3 says, at verse 2, it says, at that time, Yahweh said to Yehoshua, make knives of flint for yourself, and circumcise the sons of Israel again the second time. Now, my question is when did they do it the first time? Because, I don't see, and the only thing I can think about this second time is it's there because of the fact that there was this big, long 40-year gap in circumcising the sons of Israel. So Yehoshua, and I'm going to show you in a minute how odd that is. It's really odd, and it just doesn't go together and make sense when you compare other texts that I'm going to bring forward here in a minute. It says, so Yehoshua made knives of flint for himself, and circumcised the sons of Israel at the hill of the foreskins. And this is why Yehoshua circumcised them. They're going to tell you why he circumcised them, because they weren't circumcised. Okay? Even the first time. It says, and all the people who came out of Mitzrayim, who were males, all the men of battle had died in the wilderness on the way after they had come out of Mitzrayim. For all the people who came out had been circumcised. That's talking about the third generation. But all the people who were born in the wilderness on the way, they came out of Mitzrayim, had not been circumcised. These are all the children that are born in the wilderness. This is the fourth generation. This fourth generation was promised to Abraham that they would be the ones to re-enter the land and inherit the promises. And that is in Genesis chapter 15, after the 400 years and some change from the time that the prophecy was given to Abraham, and including the 210 to 215 years that they were in Mizraim. So it says, for the children of Israel walked 40 years in the wilderness till all the nation, the men of battle who had come out of Mizraim, that's the third generation, were consumed because they did not obey the voice of Yahweh, to whom Yahweh swore not to show them the land which he had sworn their fathers that he would give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. And Yehoshua, verse 7, circumcised their sons, whom he raised up in their place, for they were uncircumcised, because they had not been circumcised on the way. That's on the way from Mitzrayim to Canaan, or what they know today as Palestine, land of Israel, land of Jacob. Okay? And it came to be when they had completed circumcising all the nation that they stayed in their places in the camp till they were healed. Okay? And they called that place Gilgal. And that's what it's called still to this day. So anyway, this is the thing. Now we're going to go over here to Leviticus chapter 12. And see, this is where the wrench comes in. And it throws a wrench into the whole thing because, I can understand Israel being rebellious and not doing what Yah's told. But there's a man here in this book by the name of Moses who, if someone went out and picked up sticks on the Sabbath day, they were put to death for that. And that's just one instance, okay? That's a one-off, basically. There were other instances where people, railed against him and basically called Yah into question. And Moses, by his word, the ground opened up and swallowed the people alive. So we're not talking about somebody who would turn and look the other way because he had a heart for the nation, a heart for the people of Israel. Yah, if you destroy this people, blot my name out of your book. Now, I believe that account is true, and the man's heart was as big as all outdoors, but I don't believe that Moses was going to put up with having this whole nation go uncircumcised. It just doesn't make any sense to me, okay? All right? Now, because it says here in Leviticus 12, and this is like, 50, 60, 90, 120 days into the we'll just say 100, somewhere between 60 and 120 days into the journey out of Mitzrayim, Yah speaks to Moses and says this. He says, speak to the children of Israel, when a woman is conceived and has given birth to a male child, then she shall be unclean 7 days, as in the days of her monthly separation she is unclean. And on the 8th day of the flesh of his foreskin is circumcised. Okay? So on the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin is circumcised. What happened to the 8th day for, according to archaeologists, 50 to 65,000 men of war, and plus elderly, or we'll say children, babies. What happened to all of those 8 days? I mean, where did they go? And like I said, I don't think Moses was on vacation. I just don't, it doesn't make any sense. So, apparently there is a huge gap in information, in this account and in this text, as we have it presented to us today. Or we are looking at a possible redaction, later, redaction where obviously they didn't take good enough care to record things correctly. I do know that the book of Joshua is a 5th century book, is based on 5th century BCE. That's before the Common Era. Or I'm sorry, it's about 7th to 8th century book. All scholars universally agree on that. And so, it's possible that this account of Joshua, it's been written outside of the scope of the time where these events actually transpired. So somewhat of the accuracy of this account, and this is a scribal account too, by the way. I don't know. If anybody has any kind of information on this, please do share it with me. But, we're looking at, an account that really, there's a conflict between the lawgiver here in the book of Joshua in chapter 5 and the account of the children of Israel being circumcised or being left uncircumcised. I don't think Moses was that neglectful to turn the eye and look the other way while an entire nation and an entire generation left their children uncircumcised. Maybe there's some third possibility that I am not seeing here. But anyway, this is just one thing that we discussed. I thought it would make a good video. I thought that, it might stimulate people to study deeper, to look into things, and to possibly, somebody that's a sharper knife than me, maybe they can come up with an answer. All right. Well, anyway, have a good night. Shalom.